Production funding for Behind the Headlines is made possible in part by the WKNO Production Fund, the WKNO Endowment Fund, and by viewers like you. Thank you.
Organizations that help during a season of need. Tonight on Behind the Headlines. I'm Eric Barnes, President and Executive Editor of the Daily Memphian. Thanks for joining us. I'm joined tonight by Sally Jones-Hines, President and CEO of MIFA. Thanks for being here again.
Thank you.
Estella Mayhew Greer is President and CEO of the Mid-South Food Bank. Thanks for being here again.
Thank you.
Pastor Keith Norman is pastor from the First Baptist Church on Broad. Thanks for being here again.
Thank you.
Along with Bill Dries, reporter with the Daily Memphian. Thank you all for being here. You've been here sometimes in similar kind of roles or other shows that we've done with you all on. But around this season, we try to always do a show that kind of talks about some of the programs and some of the organizations that try to satisfy need during this season. And I'll start just for each of you, and maybe I'll start with you, Pastor. You maybe have, as a church, have maybe the broadest mission and the broadest sort of connections with your community, maybe. But what are those needs? What are the most pressing needs that you see among your neighborhood and among the people you serve?
Food, shelter, and clothing, probably in that order. Healthcare would be added to that list. And as public servants, we can be on the show at different points in time simply because we change our mission or we adapt to the needs around us, maybe as a church, a little bit more flexibly than other organizations, but we see those needs and we adjust and we get out there and do what we have to do to make it work.
Estella, you all maybe have the most focused mission and probably, maybe one of the most important missions. That's a hard thing to say because you all are doing good work. But talk about the Mid-South Food Bank obviously is providing food and help throughout the year. Does anything really change during the holidays, or is there just more awareness of it during the holidays?
There's more awareness, but what changes during the holidays that I think many people don't understand is that children are out of school. And those children are missing the 2 meals that they normally get at school. And parents who are struggling to make ends meet have to think about, how am I going to feed my children? And so many of the people that we provide services to are people who are working every day, struggling to make ends meet. And so this is a time where they're concerned about, how am I going to make up those 2 meals that I don't have to worry about when school is in? And of course, our partner agencies want to provide more food during the holiday season.
And then we'll come back to each of you. But Sally, for you all do Meals on Wheels. People associate MIFA with that. And then also just companion program, not just, but companion programs with seniors, but also a lot of homeless outreach,
right,
rehousing people, families in crisis. All of that during the holidays. Does it get worse, or is it that we, the media and others, just end up putting more attention on it?
Well, I think a little bit of both. I think that this time of year, so many of us who are blessed to have a warm home and food in the cupboard and family take that for granted, and families who are struggling with a crisis or seniors who are isolated, that lack is just exacerbated during the holidays. It feels more intense, I think.
And we'll talk a little bit about how people can get involved later on, but I'm going to go to Bill now.
All right. Keith, I think you brought a prop with you to kind of show what this means in terms of meeting people where they are, that maybe some people who are doing okay don't think about. And that is that this is about survival, and this is about things that the rest of us don't normally think about.
Yeah. So one of our partners, Baptist Memorial Healthcare, and then also Christ Community Clinic, we'll do outreach to homeless people or to men and women who are struggling to find shelter. We'll include in these backpacks warm socks and a scarf around the neck, bottles of water, all sorts of toiletries and things of that effect. But it also goes back to something that Mrs. Stella said a moment ago. We recognize that kids are also caught up in this crisis as well. In Shelby County, we have a vast need to make sure that those who are most vulnerable are taken care of. And so there are children oftentimes attached to these families that we have to serve. And so when we're providing food and shelter, or just some of the basic things like Sally mentioned that we enjoy every day, we're trying to make sure that those families have dignity as well, or they have some means for enjoying the time that they can have together without focusing on the needs that are missing from their life at that particular point.
And the backpack speaks to the mobility. This may be someone who is sleeping under a bridge. This may be someone who is sleeping on someone's couch. This may be someone who's in an abandoned house, just need to have a roof over their head.
Homelessness, and someone can correct me on this, is defined as not having a permanent place to stay for a consecutive number of days. They may move from home to home, or they may go from place to place. Even if it's within someone else's home, that person is still considered homeless. And so, they don't have a permanent address where they can receive mail or receive a utility bill or something to that effect. And that takes place in Memphis. It's one of the things that we see with the school system. You hear all of the people in the school system talking about that now, the challenges that they face. But it also takes place with poverty and joblessness and all of the issues that these organizations help to combat and fight on a daily basis.
Right. Estella, in providing food for many agencies, is there the consideration about what is ready to eat?
Oh yes, definitely. For example, in our backpack program for children, we use shelf-stable product. Of course, the backpacks are more expensive for us to provide, but we have shelf-stable milk and the meals, because we know that many of the children that are receiving our backpacks may be going to homes with no utilities. And so it's food that they can eat if they're not able to heat it, and it's shelf-stable. So we consider that, and even for our seniors that we provide services to as well, we make sure that there's shelf-stable product.
Right, and there's the weekend to consider as well, because even if school's out for the week and they're coming back on Monday, what happens on Saturday and Sunday? 2 days is a long time when you don't have enough to eat.
Yeah, and our backpack program provides 6 meals for the weekend, so the children are not returning to school hungry. And when there's this break during the holidays, we, on that last distribution at the school, make sure that we're providing additional food for them.
Right. Sally, what does MIFA see in terms of the issues that arise from just this very simple but formidable barrier?
Well, food is our request for food vouchers. We give food vouchers at MIFA that then families go to pantries. Always do increase during the holidays and when school is out. So it is a real and basic need to meet in the community, and often means families come to MIFA because they are experiencing a crisis and they're having to choose between putting food on the table or paying utilities. So we're able to say, well, we'll help with the utility bill, and we can help on that front so that perhaps they can pay attention to the other needs in the household.
Is there a typical transition from survival to living a life with goals and things beyond just putting food on the table? Is there a typical path for that, or is it as different as the people who come through the door?
It's really as different as the people who come through the door. And so often, happily, all a family needs is that immediate assistance, and then they can get back on their feet, because it's a temporary crisis. It might be a medical bill, it might be a layoff, and they just need a little bridge to steady themselves. But of course, we do screen homeless families, as the pastor was talking about, and we screen about 2,000 families a year who are literally homeless. And during the holidays, because often they are families who might be staying with the grandmother or an aunt or someone that just feels the house is fuller and there's more stress and more tension. So those families might be more likely to come to MIFA because grandmother has said, you need to find another place.
You mentioned 2,000 people, homeless families that throughout the year. Is that correct?
Yes.
That you serve? And about how many Meals on Wheels? Just give a scale. I mean, of what the number of meals you're providing and so on.
Meals, we provide about 1,200 home delivered meals every weekday.
Every weekday. And then senior companion programs. how many seniors? Is that part and parcel of Meals on Wheels, or is that totally
No, it's a different program, and it's a smaller program. We have about 50 senior companions, but the idea is that an active senior who is lower income will volunteer to be a companion, and then they provide services to a senior who is isolated or needs assistance. And it's not medical care, but it might be light housekeeping or reading or going to the grocery.
Or
and it's
simple
really
companionship,
such a,
right?
Yeah,
I mean,
it's a win-win
yeah.
because it's great for the senior who is able to serve, and then of course it's a wonderful benefit for the senior who needs that assistance.
And about how many families or how many meals, how do you quantify the need and what you're able to provide of that need?
Well, we work with agencies, nonprofit organizations that are providing, and we put no restrictions on our agencies. We have some partner agencies that may only serve a household once a quarter, but then we have others that will provide services on a monthly basis, because if their decision is, if they're coming to us, then they must be hungry. We measure our distribution pounds, and every pound, every meal equals about 1.5 pounds. So at this time, we're distributing anywhere from 12 to 15 million pounds annually, but once we get into our new facility, we'll be able to double that amount.
And well, I'm going to come back to funding in a second. Now I'll go to Pastor Norman. Yeah, we ran into each other recently, and you were right after Thanksgiving, and you talked about again, your churches. These are independent organizations, obviously the churches, right, but it's a little different. I mean, you've got all kinds of things going on in the church, but I've always been struck by what you all do in terms of outreach. Yeah. I mean, you're not sort of a church on a corner in your neighborhood. You're very much out in the neighborhood. But you were talking about delivering meals and turkeys, and stopping buses was one of the things that that scared me for you, but was also really intriguing. Talk about what you did at Thanksgiving.
So Thanksgiving for us, for about 20 years now, we've had homeless outreach where we invite people to come to our church facility and really have a big Thanksgiving meal. We thought everybody wanted to just sit down at the table and enjoy themselves. And we want to do it with dignity and with love. And we also do wraparound services. Some people who have not talked to loved ones in years, we have a phone bank that is provided by a partner. They can get in touch with family members from all across the world. I mean, people can go make free phone calls. We actually have a person that does healthcare services, flu shots, HIV screenings, because here are people who have not had medical services possibly from one year to the next. And then we sit down together, have a great Thanksgiving meal. Then we deliver to homes. We had some people who could not get to us, so we decided to get to them. And the men of our church, led by a guy named Dwayne Rhodes for years, have gotten upwards of 1,000 hot meals delivered in a day's time, and they go out and do it. And this year we had a partner that when we thought we were at the end of, giving away food baskets, we give away baskets to homes that'll come and pick them up. We feed people. They also get hair services, haircuts, and we open Tresman Vocational Center through a partnership there, and they go get their hair done, and clothes, we give them away, and all of this. It's a wonderful day when people volunteer and give up their Thanksgiving. But we had about 20 or so baskets left, and I had them in the trunk of my truck. And so I saw these people getting on the bus over in the neighborhood where we were serving. So I pulled in front of the bus and waved them down and said, "Hey, would you all like a Thanksgiving basket?" And everybody's like, "Yeah." So they got off the bus, they got a basket, and got back on the bus. And it felt good to serve, but here were men and women, and one man said it this way. He said, "I don't have a place to cook it, but I have a place to go. And if I take something in and they cook it, they'll let me stay."
Yeah.
And that was Thanksgiving for me. It was fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So and
it's all self-funded, by the way.
Yeah, I was going to say.
You got funding sources you want to tell me about? Let me know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so you all are doing that through the church, through the donations of the church of your members.
I think that's what we're supposed to be doing. I don't tell any church what their mission should be, but when I read the mission of Christ as I understand it, he did not try to tell people about salvation without meeting their social needs first. When he sat them down on the hill, he said, "Feed them." If I'm going to teach them and talk to them, but it's hard to teach a person when they're hungry. It's hard to get a kid to focus on a lesson in school when he or she is hungry. So yeah, I want to talk to you about your soul, but I want you to be well fed, and I want you to have the dignity of the person sitting next to you as well.
Well, and in a completely, non-religious way, Dorsey Hobson, the outgoing superintendent of schools who was on the show last week, said a very similar thing in that.
Yeah, I taught him that. No,
you taught him that. Dorsey talked about it, and he's talked about it before, that that the school system, because they're delivering so many kids in need, and Estella mentioned this, that it's hard to learn, it's hard to do math if you haven't had a meal, if you don't have dry clothes, if you haven't slept somewhere, and so. But back to you, we talked about funding. Your funding sources for the Mid-South Food Bank are what?
From everywhere. Majority of our funds come from individuals, but we have corporate support from foundations, and as a part of Feeding America, we're able to get grants through Feeding America to help us with our mission. But we rely on the individual who sends us $1 a month, or that individual that sends $1,000 a month.
And for you all, I assume you'll take it either way, but is there a preference of money versus food?
Money is preferred because the food drives, people like to do that, and we don't discourage that, but oftentimes people are cleaning out their pantries, and we have to check the code dates or make sure the cans aren't dented or rust, and we have to pay to discard that. So for every dollar we're spending to discard the food that we can't use, that's 3 meals that we're not providing to our hungry neighbors.
Yeah. Sally, funding for you all, the sources?
Similar to the Mid-South Food Bank, it's from everywhere. We do have government sources as well. So Meals on Wheels is funded partly through the Older Americans Act. Some of our homeless services are funded through HUD and the city and those kinds of grants. But individuals make up all of that difference, and the majority of MIFA's funding also is from individuals.
Before I go to Bill, I think one of the last times you were on the show was your 50th anniversary, or MIFA's 50th anniversary this last summer. Am I right about that? And you talked, you're always live in fear of federal funding. Where are you right now in terms of federal funding?
Federal funding, I think, has been just flat, which actually means decreasing because costs, of course, and everything go up. But we feel, in a way, blessed that it has not been cut.
Okay. Bill, 10 minutes left.
Estella, tell me about your new facility. When are you going to be able to start using it?
We're hoping no later than April, and one of the benefits of that facility, Pastor Norman talked about health, and we know that poor nutrition contributes to poor health. And in this new facility, we will have the freezer and refrigeration space to be able to provide fresh produce and the protein product that many of the clients that our partner agencies serve cannot afford to buy. And so we're excited about that. We're looking at establishing partnerships with some of our community clinics so that we can provide the food that is needed, for example, for patients who are diabetic, specific foods that they need. So we're really excited about being able to transition into that facility and provide better services. And it's not just putting food out the door, which is what we used to do, but we want to make lives better for the clients that our partner agencies are serving. And so I'll give you an example that our partnerships, Tresvant Manor, the seniors there learned about senior hunger and wanted to do something. So they started a program where they actually come and pack the boxes and distribute it to seniors who are living in subsidized housing. And they do it on a quarterly basis. We were able to take that pilot and present it to Feeding America and get a grant so that now monthly we're going to the subsidized housing where seniors live and providing fresh produce and protein product and the foods that they can't afford to buy. So it's not just shoving whatever comes in the door out the door, but being focused on what's going to impact health and make our citizens more healthy.
I want to interrupt and just tell a story that I think complements that. We had a note from one of our home delivered meals clients because one day we had been able to deliver fresh pears along with the cooked meal, and she wrote back about that pear and that it was the first fresh pear she had ever had in her life. Which was just an incredible, and
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how did that, just break that down, how did that become possible, that you could get the fresh produce? Because I assume there's a cost benefit. You have a canned food, it's much less expensive and easier to transport, you don't have to refrigerate. How did you get to the point where you could actually
Sometimes we'll
deliver?
have fresh produce donated. In this case, I think our vendor was able to provide that. And the woman said, you know, I'd had canned pears before and never liked them very much. And then here I had this fresh pear. I was, oh, that's what a pear really is.
Yeah.
That's a reality.
Yeah. Keith, do you think we are going beyond meeting the need? Do you think that as a community we're actually making a dent in these conditions, in poverty, which has been a historic problem?
Bill, that's an interesting question, because there are two dynamics that exist in Memphis. On one list, somewhere we can be the most philanthropic city in the nation. And then on another list, we can be the most impoverished. So that says something to me, that says we're giving a lot, but are we really changing the dynamic? And that's where the great concern is. We have to now give towards the things that take away the dynamic and keep it from increasing, because poverty is continuing to grow. We found that after 50 years later from Dr. King's movement and from the assassination death of Dr. King, that we're actually worse off than we were 50 years ago. So that says to me that these dynamics aren't changing, they're actually growing. Even though we have kind people, and I'm listening to the two pros sitting right here. You notice when you ask them about funding sources, they didn't name names because they knew the pastor was going to write a letter, but they're smart. But the
healthy competition.
Yeah, right, healthy competition. The members of First Baptist Church give all of our money. But the philanthropy is there, but the need is still increasing. So we have to figure out how to fix these systems that continue to bring people into the need.
Providing a living wage.
Right, providing a living wage, making sure that people have sustainable employment over a long period of time, and not, you know, all of the agency type employment, and then giving people the job skills that they need and the financial management skills that they need so that they can manage the resources and help get out of this situation. We're trying every day through these services, but we want to be out of business.
Yeah, right. Well, to something you just mentioned with just a couple of minutes left here, a living wage, people, how many, I don't know if you have the number, but it might surprise people how many people who have jobs are nonetheless getting food from the food bank.
You know, it's
because I think there's this kind of stereotype of, well, you know, that's a person who doesn't have a job, who isn't doing anything, and is just living on, you know, handouts.
This is an old survey, but the last hunger survey we did, 40% of the households that we provided services to, there was someone in that household who was working. And I'm sure that number has increased by now, but when you think about people who come, we're now serving people who fall above the poverty level.
What is poverty level right now? Do we know? Do you know offhand? I'm putting you on the spot.
I think it's a $26,000 figure.
Yeah, and so people are above that because they're struggling to make ends meet, and they're making choices between gas to get to work because we have an inadequate public transportation system, fixing an old car. Am I going to pay rent? Am I going to pay for this hospital visit? What am I going to pay? And food is what's left off the table often.
We just had a program the Tuesday night at the church, the weatherization program with the NAACP and Tennessee Valley Authority, the TVA. We were trying to help people fix their homes where they're paying very high utility bills. And so many people were there saying, look, I either have to get behind on my utility bill so I can buy groceries or provide Christmas to some degree for my children. And so I can tell you they'll be back in January going, can you help me with the utility bill? And we know exactly where these things come from. People are making choices. And I'll tell you something else that's often left off the table, medicine. I'll just live without medicine. I'll, if I can't get it free, I'll just take it. And some people even do every other day on prescriptions they should be taking every day.
And our seniors will get the medicine and not food. And what's the point if you're not eating properly?
If you're not eating properly,
And the staff noted that 26,000 is the poverty line for a family of 4, just to clarify. So 4 people, and let me, with just a couple minutes left, for each of you, an organization, not your own, maybe not at the table, that is just of interest to you, that does interesting stuff. You all are in the community of people helping. I'll start with you, Sally. Just an organization out there that you find intriguing?
Well, so much of MIFA's mission is also about serving, and our vision is uniting the community through service. I think that Volunteer Odyssey here in Memphis does a wonderful job of connecting volunteers with meaningful opportunities. So they take the time to really connect someone who wants to serve with something that that volunteer will stick with.
And for people who want to help you all are on the, I assume if they go to the website they can.
MIFA.org.
Okay. And for you, other organizations in town?
Neighborhood Christian Center.
Yes.
They're serving families, children, seniors, and doing an awesome job addressing whatever needs they have, whether it's clothing, food, shelter, furniture when they get into a new place. Neighborhood Christian Center does an awesome job. I could not pick another organization.
And for people who want to help you all, they can go to the website.
MidSouthFoodBank.org.
Okay. And
I'm going to say Baptist.
He's got his backpack.
Because, let me
This
tell you
is the
why.
first prop in the
It's
history behind the headlines, by the way.
The medical needs. They take the van and they go all over the city of Memphis providing needs. And another one I'd like to throw in, the Gall House. They provide services for men whom have been either addicted or men who are getting out of prison. We haven't addressed that population. The recidivism rate is high because men who get out of prison commit a crime to go back to prison so that they can have a meal, so that they can have a place to stay. But we want to get them out and make them productive. And so the Gall House is helping with that, GAAL. They do a great job. Baptist Memorial Healthcare also does the mobile vans, as well as providing services for those who just got out of prison as well.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you for being here. And thank you for watching. Join us again next week.